Welcome to We Are the People with Tracy Marks and Jorge Estamba, who ask you to know what's happening with your student loan. Tracy and Jorge keep a deep look at student loans in this country and the industries that surround it. Every week, We Are the People will bring you new insight into the corporate welfare industry, such as bailouts, and they connect with student loans. The show will highlight on your constitutional rights and how the current system is built to infringe upon them. Join the conversation by visiting our website chat room at wearethepeople.tv. Or call the show at 888-565-1470 and let us hear from you. And now, let's tune in to Tracy and Jorge for this week's discussion.
Good evening and welcome to Boca Raton, Florida. We're here at Lynn University with the Student Broadcasting Association, who is helping us this evening to film our Congressman, Ted Deutsch, this evening. He has agreed to join us one more time, and what we want to do is give him an opportunity to talk to you about what his constituents are most concerned about. So with that, we have our co-host with us tonight, Jorge Estamba.
Thank you for being with us again. And again, We Are the People is a show that is intended exclusively for the American people so that we can improve our country. That's all we're trying to do here. We're not politicians. We are just plain people that want our country to be improved through a democratic process, and that's all we do. And we just ask you to tell your people to support us with viewership, okay? Because this is something that we need to grow. This is how we touch people, and this is part of activism, and I think that's very necessary for our country. Having said that, I'll turn it over to Tracy, and we'll get this going.
So, we spoke a little bit, and as I'm sure most people are concerned with, our economy is probably your biggest issue that people talk to you about. What are they asking you to do, and what are you telling them to do, and what are our steps here?
Well, thanks, and thanks for letting me join you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, the economy is front and center in everyone's mind, and what people would like is a Congress and a government that just responds to their basic needs, the kinds of things that would actually help the largest number of people, that would help our economy, that would create a more inclusive economy, the kinds of steps that we wonder why it hasn't happened yet. Raising the minimum wage is something that I hear about all the time. We get calls on regularly. Equal pay for equal work, so that women who do the same job, a woman who does the same job as a man is compensated the same way.
Yeah, I like that one.
These are such basic principles. The fact that in this country there are people who are working for minimum wage full time and still find themselves in poverty is just something that's really impossible to get your head around in the richest country on earth. The result is they're not paid enough. They find themselves in a tough situation receiving government benefits that they shouldn't need, because if they were paid a decent wage,
paid a decent
they
amount,
they wouldn't need it. So those are the types of issues that really matter to people. They hit them right at home where they are, and people are frustrated because they don't understand why we haven't been able to do either of those, for example.
Congressman, I have a question for you. The opposition, their main strategy regarding the incrementation of the minimum wage at 1010 is that it would hinder basically the small business, which historically has been our main stream to generating jobs. 75% are generated by this small businessman.
Yeah.
How would you respond to the opposition, this type of rhetoric from the opposition?
I appreciate the concern. I appreciate the concern for small business. It's where we ought to be focused. Every time, however, there's been an effort to raise the minimum wage, every time we're told it will kill jobs. And every time the results has been the opposite, and it's not that hard to understand why.
Well, the proof is out there. All you have to do is look.
If you raise the minimum wage and there's more money in people's pockets, it's more money for them to use in our local small businesses, at our local mom and pops, and that strengthens the whole economy. That ought to be our goal.
But you have large corporations. Walmart, of course, is the example most people use, and they come in and they kill all the small business. We have no jobs to go to anymore. You know, there's a huge list of jobs that are overseas. The Small Business Administration no longer has the money to give that they used to. It's just not working as it originally was intended to. So, you know, what are our options here? Without jobs, without the support for small business, I mean, what do we do about that?
Well, there are a lot of ways that we can support small business. We can support small business by making sure that we have a tax code that's fair to them, that we have a corporate tax code that doesn't allow the largest corporations to pay no or virtually no income tax, while the little guys are getting hammered. That's a step that we could take. We can move.
But how do we make that happen? Because it's not happening. I mean, we
Well,
have a lot of steps we could take, but our government, they can't even negotiate. I mean, if you've ever read one book on negotiation, you can see that there is no negotiating. They both want their own way. It's
it's not a question of whether. It's not that we can't negotiate. In order to negotiate, you have to have a debate. There has to be something on the table for you to negotiate. The minimum wage, raising the minimum wage to $10.10, that's not a debate that we've even been able to have, because the House leadership, for example, hasn't been willing to bring it up for a debate. Same thing with equal pay for equal work. Same thing with changing the tax laws to make them more equitable for small businesses, to have them favor American companies that create jobs here instead of companies that ship jobs overseas. We need to be able, in order to negotiate, we need to have something to negotiate about. And that's only going to happen if Speaker Boehner is willing to let us have that debate that the American people want us to have.
Well, that's the thing. You've got Boehner, Fox, and Klein. All right, I'm going to use Sallie Mae, for instance, because I'm a student loan advocate, okay? They all have huge, huge amounts of money that Sallie Mae has paid them. Frederica Wilson actually has a bill that's been there, sitting there for over a year. I hope you'll take a look at it if you haven't before. You know, it may not be the whole answer, but it surely is much more of what a student of government even would want that would be helpful. I mean, I'm all for Elizabeth Warren and the refinancing thing, but that's a Band-Aid. You know, so you've got these people in these positions, they're being paid. For Sallie Mae, for instance, how are we ever supposed to getting anything on the floor to where it's supposed to be when the big companies are paying the people that are supposed to be bringing it up?
Well, I will tell you the answer to a lot of these questions is meaningful campaign finance reform.
Yes.
I mean, we have a system that, because of a couple of decisions now, by a conservative majority of the U.S. Supreme Court, that says that there is nothing wrong for corporations and a handful of billionaires to spend unlimited amounts of money in campaigns.
Well, they're people now.
Right. We're looking. Right. We're looking at this election. We're expecting to see record amounts of money, billions of dollars spent in this midterm election. A lot of it on really awful campaign advertisements, and a lot of it.
I'm so sick of those.
Yeah, who isn't?
I am so sick of those.
Right. Who isn't sick of those? And so we need the best thing that we can do to try to put these issues that matter so much to all of us and to your viewers and to regular people is to pass campaign finance reform, to overturn the Citizens United decision, which is what put us in this place to begin with, so that we can get the money out of politics and we can get the concerns of everyday Americans back into politics every day.
Congressman, that would take a constitutional amendment. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I'm the proud author of the Democracy for All Amendment, which is the amendment in the United States House that would do exactly that. It would address this issue. It would give Congress the ability to set some reasonable limits so that we don't have unlimited spending by a handful of people, and would address the fundamental issue, which is the idea that that there's some free speech right for a billionaire to spend millions of dollars in a campaign. Free speech isn't free in our country if only the wealthy can afford it.
Exactly.
And that's the position we're in. So our amendment has, it was moved ahead in the U.S. Senate, 55 votes there. We have well over 100 co-sponsors, and I would hope that the people who watch your show encourage their members
Definitely.
to co-sponsor the Democracy for All
I wanted to
amendment.
follow up on something very critical that you just mentioned,
Yep.
which bothers me a lot. And that has to do with the congressional procedures that started in the 1990s, and that is the power that the Speaker of the House has gotten. I believe it started with the Hastert Rule in the 1990s, which, to put it in perspective right now, is John Boehner, as the House Speaker, can stop bills from going to the floor and being discussed, and that really is one of the critical elements that has stopped a lot of the bills from becoming laws that are integral part of our democracy and for the improvement of our country. How do we get rid of that procedure, which is not a law?
It's not a law. It's not a law at all. And for
rid of
people, for people who may not be as familiar, the way that Speaker Boehner approaches his leadership of the House, he doesn't want to bring anything forward for a vote unless it can pass the House with 218 votes strictly from his own party. So if there are 234 Republicans and you need 218 to pass anything, since he wants to always be able to do
never
that,
gonna happen.
it makes it really difficult, given
Correct.
that there are some in his party who refuse to do anything that will advance the interests of everyday Americans. So the best thing that we can do is to continue just to increase the pressure on him. There's no question in my mind that if we had the chance to debate and vote on a minimum wage increase, that we could pull together a majority of the House to do it, Democrats and Republicans. Same thing is true for immigration reform. Same thing, I believe, might even be true for some reasonable gun safety legislation.
I agree wholeheartedly.
But, and in every one of these instances, the American people want to see movement, but because we're not even able to have the debate, we never get to advance the ball.
Now, again, a follow-up. I don't know if I picked that up. Is there anything that we can do as a country, as a people, to do away with that rule? How do we get rid of that, which is ruining our
Other than
country?
get rid of Boehner.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's not a. That's the thing. It's not a. It's
not
a
a
rule.
It's-
The only rule.
It's an unwritten rule. It's a procedure
Right.
that is carries no weight, but it is implemented. So
Right.
it's very difficult. I mean, how are you an attorney?
I am.
How would you? I mean, what is the answer? I mean, it's very frustrating.
Well, I don't think there's a legal answer. I
Okay.
think there's a political answer, and the political answer is to continue to increase the pressure to make sure that that the Speaker understands he's not the Speaker of the Republican Party. He's the Speaker of the House, and as such, he needs to let the House work, which means letting us actually debate and vote on the important issues of the day. And if he's worried that some of those issues might not have the support of everyone in his own caucus, that should come secondary to the needs of the American people as a whole. And there are lots of people in the House who recognize that the way we ought to do this is the way it was always done in the past, which is to have good, open debates where we're able to offer amendments to pieces of legislation. And then we've got a final product that people can decide after talking to their constituents and looking inside themselves, is this something I should support or not? But we need to be able to get to that point, and he's just not willing to let us do it.
One
right
final. I'm sorry, Tracy. I don't want to hog this.
yeah, I see
No,
how you are.
one more. I believe that the Democratic Party has not done a good enough job of informing the people specifically, without being afraid. We have to speak to the people and say, listen, the problem we have is this, and tell it like it is. I'm from the generation of tell it like it is. People need to be told. The problem is that we can't get anything done because this man, what you just told me, but we have to, and I'm a Democrat, I don't have any problem, but I'm very frustrated because we need to get the message out. We need to do things this way, and the obstruction is coming in this manner. I don't see it. I see a lot of people that are afraid to speak that, and that frustrates me as a member of the Democratic Party, which I'm an executive council member in South Florida.
Well, I can't. I can only speak for myself, and as far as I'm concerned, you're right that we ought to be clear. We ought to be clear about the fact that right now you have two very different views in the House of Representatives. You have one view that says that the decisions we make are decisions that should favor the special interests, the gun manufacturers, the coal industry, the oil industry, and special interests who have all sorts of benefits that other people don't have. Billions of dollars a year to the oil companies, some of the richest companies in the world.
That's
get
what I don't
subsidies.
get.
Instead, what we ought to be doing is figuring out how we're going to combat global warming, how we deal with climate change in a meaningful way.
And subsidize small businesses,
differences
not
are
big
so-
corporations.
Yeah, the differences are so stark. You've got one group that's really interested in maintaining the benefits that are enjoyed by a small, by a very few. That's a few individuals and some corporations, and then you have the Democratic Party that I'm proud to be a part of, that firmly believes that we're all going to do better if we can raise the minimum wage, which is going to benefit everyone, if we can promote American jobs, which will help everyone, if we can move forward with immigration reform, which is going to help the economy, it's going to help families, it's going to reduce the deficit. These are all the kinds of things that seem so obvious to people when they stop to think about it. They just need to know it's not so easy to get done because there's a political process that we have to deal with, but we can't be afraid to jump in
Correct.
With both feet.
Correct.
So have you read Donald Cleveland's book, Revitalizing America?
I have to admit I have read some of Don's book. Don's a friend.
He introduced
Yeah.
us actually at your event.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, look, there are a lot of people who recognize what some of the problems
Yes.
are. This is just a conversation that we can't be afraid to have. Because of all this money in politics, there are important voices that don't have a chance to rise up and be heard.
And how is that fair? You know, you've
It
got these
isn't.
people over here spending
It's
billions of dollars, and this guy's got 20 grand,
Yeah.
you know, but he's probably the better candidate, or at least would try to be a better candidate.
That's the issue
Right.
that you raised with Citizens United. That's
Right.
the problem that it brings, correct?
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. And the result is you've got races all over the country this election season where these outside groups are just deciding in the last couple weeks of the campaign they're going to go spend $3 million in this race and $6 million in this race and $10 million in that race. And the candidates who have spent all of this time trying to get their message out to help people understand what they're fighting for find it so difficult to be able to achieve that at the end when it really matters, because you've got a handful of billionaires and special interests who are silencing even their efforts to make their positions clear.
Correct.
And it's not helpful. It's not healthy for our democracy. It's not consistent with our Bill of Rights. The framers of the Constitution never intended when they drafted the First Amendment that it was going to be used to silence the opinions of the masses.
So
and
how
to
do we get
shift
to the
it.
point where now that's allowed to happen? I mean, we know that's not what they intended, yet
Right.
it is happening.
Right. Well, I mean, unfortunately, we have
Supreme Court.
some Supreme Court decisions that that I think were wrongly decided that we have to overcome. The only way to do that is to amend the Constitution, which is not easy. But people shouldn't believe that just because it's not easy, we shouldn't try to do it. There are times when it's the only solution. That's where we are now. And even as we wage this battle, which has support from hundreds of groups across the country at the grassroots level who
That's
understand.
why I don't understand
why-
why we haven't gone
Yeah.
farther with this.
Well, you're seeing the support. You're seeing votes of support in city councils and county
Everywhere.
commissions everywhere. The only people who don't seem to get it are in Washington, and that's why what you do is so important, and the ability for people to know about the Democracy for All Amendment, to reach out to their elected officials and ask them really simply, who do you stand with? Do you stand with me and the American people, or do you stand with the special interests?
That's a
Put
key
it right to
comment
'em.
you just made, that
Yeah.
people realize that we have to do that. We have to get that message out. Call our congressman, write our congressman. We have to do it, because if we don't do it, it's going to be very difficult. Am I right in saying that?
Absolutely, and it matters when people call in. I tell people all the time who think,
You have a wonderful staff.
no, thanks. I tell people it's not, they think it doesn't matter if they call their congressman, if they email their congressman. Absolutely it does. We keep track of everyone who calls, and we pay attention to it. People just need to get mobilized.
Not
And do
from
other
you,
congressmen do that?
But, well, I don't know. You know,
Yeah,
Rubio, it's very form letter. If you don't agree with them, it's such a form that I get very discouraged personally with a lot of them.
Right, but you make it a form letter back, and the person that you talk to may simply say, I'll take that down and I'll pass your comments on to the congressman, but they do, and if hundreds of people and more, if thousands of people call the office, it's impossible for them to ignore.
That's the whole
what's
key.
important.
It has to be done in volume. So I would imagine you're a proponent of petitions via email, which later on get printed and taken to a congressman's office, which Move On, which I'm a member of,
Yep.
does. You feel that is very, very healthy and necessary, that we take on these signed petitions, whereby, I mean, that speaks volumes, does it not?
Yeah, I think it's one thing to say that you oppose all of these issues that we talk about, if you're not feeling any pressure to change.
Correct.
But when you hear from real Americans and they tell you how much they care about these issues, you have no choice but to take note.
So we have about 5 minutes left.
That is correct.
Is there anything specific I can't talk. Specifically that you would like to address that we haven't talked about?
Another subject matter or anything that in the last 5 minutes
Sure. Well,
of importance?
I think there's been this is important for this election, and it's really important as we look ahead to 2016. There's been this concerted effort in lots of states, including my state of Florida, at the highest levels, to make it more difficult for people to participate in democracy.
The
to
good old
make it
voter suppression.
harder for them to vote
It cost me
instead of easier.
$68 to get my driver's license because they wanted my divorce papers from 1,000,000 years ago. Okay, now what's it going to do? I chose to do the $68 because I figured between the time and effort for changing my bank accounts and everything else, they were not, and I had notarized papers of everything, you know, and they would not accept it. And I was down there 3 times.
Is that a form of voter suppression,
They're
Congressman?
nasty down there.
The
number
more
one.
the more laws that are passed at the state level that add layer upon layer of requirements just to cast your vote, the harder it is
It needs
for
to be
people to participate in
simplified.
our democracy. And when in Florida, when our governor a few years back tried to purge the voter rolls, he said to ensure that voters who aren't eligible can't vote. Instead, what we saw, and we uncovered dozens of cases that in fact were just the tip of the iceberg, thousands of eligible voters who would have lost the right to vote had we not pushed back and beaten back that effort. That's going to be really important over the next few years. We need to make it easier for people to participate in our democracy, not harder. We need to move forward so that the people will want to vote and will find it easy to vote
Well,
and
that's
to make
the
their voices
thing.
heard.
They're beaten at every
Right.
turn. I mean, you feel like, first we're educated. Okay, now we've got debt. Now the middle class is pushed into. There's apathy there. I mean, you can't help it.
Right, and when people are apathetic, they don't participate, and
Exactly. They
there
don't
is an
believe in the
ongoing
system
effort,
anymore.
and we see it in the ads, to make people so disgusted and so apathetic that they want to stay home.
Yes.
The reason that we keep fighting for all these issues, to make college more affordable, to raise the minimum wage, to address the pay inequities, the reason that we spend so much time working at this is so that people know that it's relevant for them to be involved. That's the most important message there is,
Yes.
because when they remain involved, it makes it more likely that we're going to be able to accomplish what we need to.
Fantastic message.
Well,
no
the
doubt about it.
Student issue is, the student loan issue. I've paid $35,000 of a $40,000 loan, and they want another 50 grand from me at Sallie Mae. Okay, and I've paid off a loan, and I've done it on Section 8, and I've borrowed from everybody I know. People are running out of resources, and they're getting very, very tired. What word of hope can you give them?
Well, on on that issue where look, we find ourselves in a situation where the cost of college has tripled over 30 years, and people's incomes have remained stagnant.
Exactly.
It's more and more expensive.
No jobs.
We need people to have a fair shot to go to college, and to make sure that their loans are affordable as well. They need to be able to refinance loans, high interest loans. We need to prevent a spike in interest rates.
Consumer protections need to be
Basically, we need,
returned.
the Consumer Finance Protection Board has taken important steps, but we need, on the whole, we need people to know that they have people in government who are looking out for everyday folks who just want to be able to go to college, get a job, buy a house, raise a family. It's not too much.
I don't mind paying
not
back
too
my
much to
money and
ask.
giving them what they want,
Being
so.
told that we're running out of
I
time,
know,
so
we
we
got
need to
30
close the show.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you,
I
Congressman. It's
appreciate
been a
you taking
pleasure
time.
again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You're not because I'm a Democrat, but your points are very well taken. Otherwise,
Thanks.
people who know me, and Tracy also would disagree with you, but you've made some very good points. We need people to communicate like you have, and we really appreciate you coming in. I think people
thanks.
really appreciate
Let's
you
just
communicating.
let's stay at it. There's too much at
We're
stake
gonna
for us to
try.
back down.
We're going to do our best.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for joining
Thanks.
Thank you for joining We Are the People. This is Tracy Marks, and she'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to We Are the People with social advocates Tracy Marks and Jorge Estamba, who every week bring to the light the needs and changes in our current system. Tune in every Monday night at 7 p.m. on wearethepeople.tv and participate in the conversation in the chat room or call 888-565-1470. Tune in next Monday for more information and facts. And Tracy and Jorge remind you to stay aware of your surroundings and challenges at all times.